Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Certificate Programs, Certificate in Nutrition and Childcare, CNCC-2 Organizing Childcare Services, Block-3 The Child, Development During Toddlerhood. Unit-13, Cognitive Development Towards Mental Representation and Symbolic Thinking. 13.1 Introduction. In the last block we studied the first 4 substages of the sensory-motor period of development. You will recall that by the end of the first year the infant's actions and behavior become intentional. She is able to coordinate her actions for a purpose, i.e., behavior becomes goal-directed. In this unit you will read about the development of thought in the second and third year of life. As in Unit 8, the discussions in this unit are based on Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to times describe the development of thinking in the 5th and 6th substages of the sensory-motor period, i.e., from 13 months to 24 months. Times explain how the child in substage 5 uses trial and error to arrive at solutions to problems. Times understand how the ability to be able to represent events mentally helps the toddler to deal more effectively with situations. Times state how the ability of mental representation influences the toddler's understanding of cause and effect relationships, imitation and make-believe play. Times summarize what the toddler achieves in the area of cognitive development by the 3rd birthday. Times relate the characteristics of toddlers' thinking described in the text to your everyday observations of children. 13.2 Thought in the second year sensory-motor period. In the last block you read about the first 4 substages of the sensory-motor period as described by Piaget in his theory of cognitive development. In this unit we will read more about the development of cognition in the sensory-motor period, and we shall briefly touch upon the characteristics of thinking in the pre-operational period. As you know, one of the major sources of data for Piaget, as he was formulating his theory of cognitive development, was his observations of his 3 children. The discussion in Unit 8 was based on his observations. In this Unit 2, we will draw upon Piaget's recordings of his children's activities to describe the changes in thinking that occur with age. As you read the descriptions that follow, you will be able to relate them to your everyday observations of children. Let us now study the development of thought in the 5th and 6th substages of the sensory-motor period. 13 February 2001, Substage 5. The 5th substage of the sensory-motor period lasts from 12 to 18 months. Let us read the following description to understand how the child's thinking changes during this period. Piaget's son was playing with a piece of bread. While playing he would drop the bread. Repeatedly he would also break off small pieces from it, drop them one by one and observe them as they fell. In the earlier stages what had interested the child was simply letting the pieces fall. The act of dropping something was fun. But now, in this instance, instead of delighting in simply letting the bread pieces fall, he observes the manner in which they fall. The next day, during his play, he dropped different objects: his toy, a box, a ball. Rouge repeated his experiment of the bread piece with them. He varied the ways of dropping these objects. Sometimes he stretched out his arm to let them fall. At other times he took them behind his head and dropped them. He also experimented by dropping things from different heights. When the object would fall in a new position, he would drop it there twice or thrice, and then he would drop it in another position. In all these instances he would look on with attention and interest as the objects fell. It is not as if this child had not dropped objects before. He had, but now there is a difference in his activity. In the earlier periods he was content to repeat an activity. Simply because it seemed interesting, he dropped things because the action of dropping things was interesting. He did not make variations in this activity. But now he is not satisfied with just repeating. Now he varies his movements to see the changes in result. He is not happy in merely dropping objects. Now he changes the method of dropping to get different results. In other words, the child now experiments. He tries out different ways of doing things. He changes his actions. You may have seen a child bang a toy against the floor, listen to the sound it makes, and then repeatedly bang it, varying the force each time. This is typical of the experimenting that toddlers do. Since toddlers modify their actions, they are able to explore the properties of objects. For example, as they drop different objects, they will notice that some bounce, some do not, and that some break. Can you think of some incidents in which a toddler seems to be trying out an action and experimenting? If you were to observe a toddler for about 5 minutes as she plays, you are sure to see some instance in which she experiments with something. Would you like to write about this anecdote in the space provided here? When you think of observe a toddler, you will find that she experiments as she kicks or throws objects, puts things in containers, pulls her toys, eats her food, and scribbles. In fact, experimentation is obvious in everything she does. This willingness and desire to try out new things makes it possible for the toddler to discover new ways of solving problems, just as Piaget's son does in the following example. The child wanted his toy, which was lying on a pillow some distance from him. The toy was too far for him to be able to reach it, but the corner of the pillow was within reach. The child struggled and thrashed his arms to get the toy and, in the process, happened to move the pillow. As the pillow moved, so did the toy. This accidental movement still did not bring the toy close enough to the child. However, the child's attention was captured by the movement of the pillow. He then started moving the pillow while watching the toy move and seemed to understand that the toy and the pillow moved together. Then, unhesitatingly, he began to pull the pillow towards him and managed to get the toy. Thus the concept that objects move when their support is moved was arrived at accidentally. But once the child grasped this, he consciously and purposefully changed his actions, which enabled him to get the toy. You, too, must have often noticed toddlers reach a solution to a task after repeated attempts. You may like to make a note of one such incident here. The advance in learning from substage 4 to substage 5 is clear. In Unit 8 you read that in substage 4 the infant begins to understand that her actions have a result. Now, in substage 5, she finds out that she can vary her actions and the result will be different. In the above example, the toddler found a solution to his problem, that of getting the toy through trial and error. Trial and error means to systematically try out different methods of solving a problem and then adopt the one which gives the best solution. We do many tasks through trial and error. We try out different ways of doing a task and, learning from our errors, adopt the one which is best suited to achieving the task. This ability to vary one's behavior and actions deliberately is a valuable tool in problem solving, and we see the first signs of it in substage 5 of the sensory-motor period. You note that by this time the toddler also uses words to communicate. The desire for active experimentation combined with the development of language and the development of motor skills enhances learning. The child's information about objects increases. 13 February 2002, Substage 6. Between 18 months and 2 years of age, a major shift in the child's manner of thinking occurs. This is the sixth substage of the sensory-motor period of development. To understand the difference between substage 5 and substage 6, let us read how Piaget's children solved the problem of putting a long chain into a matchbox, which was partially open. This is how one of his children, in substage 5, solved the problem. She put one end of the chain into the box and then tried to put the rest of the chain in, little by little. She was able to put only a little bit in when the chain fell out. The child began again and the chain dropped out as before. She tried the same technique 15 times in succession, with the same result each time. On her 16th attempt, by chance, she grasped the chain in the middle. The chain was now no longer lengthened as before, but took the form of two entwined cords. Held this way, the child was better able to put the chain inside the matchbox. However, even now she succeeded in putting the chain in partially, she was not able to put it in completely. In the next attempt she tried to put the chain in as she did in the first 15 instances and, as expected, was unable to put it in the matchbox. In the next try she again held the chain in the middle and succeeded in putting the chain in partly. Thus we see that during the process of repeated trials and errors, the child accidentally discovered a solution, that of holding the chain in the middle, and then deliberately modified her behavior to achieve the task behavior typical of a child in substage 5. Now let us see how the other child, in substage 6, worked out a solution to the same problem. In the FTRS T3 attempts she tried to put the chain in part by part, just as the child in substage 5 did and was unable to put it in. On the fourth attempt she began as before, but then paused for some time and seemed to be thinking. Then, with sure movements, she put the chain on a flat surface nearby, rolled it into a ball, picked up this ball of chain and put it into the box. The difference between the two solutions is striking. The second child did not accidentally discover the solution. On the contrary, she was able to think out the solution, and then tilde as able to carry it out. The child had now found a new way of solving problems, part of working out the tilde solution mentally. This means that she was able to represent the task mentally and work out its solution in her imagination, instead of relying on actually doing a task to arrive at the solution. This ability to form mental representation of events, of being able to picture events to oneself, is the hallmark of substage 6. If you were to observe toddlers closely for some time, you would be able to see many such activities in which they represent events to themselves and work out solutions mentally. Let us read another account to get a clearer understanding of this ability. To go out of the house, Fatima, 22 months old, had to unlatch the door. The latch was within her reach, but she did not know how to operate it. On occasion when she could not get anyone to open the door for her, she would kick at the door, shake it with her hands and move it to and fro. During these maneuvers the latch would usually drop away, the door would open and Fatima would go out. One day Fatima approached the door as usual, began to shake it, but then stopped and looked at the latch for some time. Then she reached up to the latch, removed it from its hook and opened the door. In all the earlier attempts, Fatima had relied on chance for the door to open, and had not understood what it was about the door which caused it to open when she shook it. But in the last instance, she seemed to have grasped that it was latch which controlled the movement of the door. Then she seems to have worked out things in her mind and opened the door with ease. Mental representation is an integral part of our day-to-day lives. We mentally plan how we will reach our place of work, thinking about the bus we will take, the route we will choose, and the way we will reach our place of work from the bus stop. As someone describes an incident or a person to us, we are able to form a picture of the event person in our mind. Mental representation is involved in every task that we do, and the rudiments of this ability are evident towards the end of the sensory-motor stage. Can you list 3 or 4 tasks from your day-to-day activities in which mental representation and symbolic thinking is involved? Once a task can be done mentally, it leads to more efficient ways of doing the task. This does not mean that the trial and error way of learning is given up by us entirely. We solve problems through trial and error in adulthood as well, but it no longer remains the only way of solving problems. Being able to represent events mentally influences the child's imitation. Imitation is one of the ways through which the child learns ways of behavior. Before the 6th substage, imitation immediately followed an action or a behavior. But now the toddler is able to delay the imitation over a considerable period of time. The following example brings this out. One day Tara's mother was observing her as she was playing with her toy monkey. During her play, Tara pretended to put the monkey to sleep. She put it on a stool, kissed its cheek, covered it with a rag, which symbolized the quilt, and patted it on the forehead, saying, "Nini," the word Tara's mother used for sleep. Her mother was pleasantly surprised to see that Tara's actions with the monkey were similar to what she herself did when she put Tara to sleep. Had Tara imitated her mother's behavior as soon as her mother performed it, it would not have involved mental representation, but since she imitated it much later, it shows that she had represented the behavior in her mind and recalled it later. You must have observed similar incidents of imitation. Can you recall any? The toddler's understanding of cause and effect also improves during the 6th substage. Earlier, the cause and its effect had to be visible to the child for her to understand the link between the two events. Now, if the child sees an event, she can infer, imagine, what the cause might be. Again, this is possible because she can picture events to herself and deduce the reasons in her imagination. An example, again from Piaget's observations of his children, will help us to understand this better. Piaget's son was seated in the carriage and Piaget himself was on a chair beside him. While reading, and without seeming to pay attention to the child, Piaget put his foot near the wheels of the carriage and made it move slowly. The child immediately leaned over the edge and looked in the direction zero the wheels and saw his father's foot there. That, in the above example, the child was not confused as to what may have IGNOU the movement, but unhesitatingly looked for a cause, which he thought would be most likely, shows that he had inferred the cause by thinking it through. It is important to remember that the child can generally make such deductions only about familiar things. The child had often sat in the carriage and knew that it moved on the wheels and that it had to be pushed to move. Had he been unfamiliar with the carriage, it is unlikely that he would have inferred the cause of movement. Many day-to-day events will show you that the toddler is now able to infer that events have causes even when she does not observe the cause. Upon seeing her toy doll broken, when the toddler asks, "Who hit it? What happened to its nose?" it implies that she understands that something must have happened to break the toy. On seeing a baby cry, toddlers may ask, "He hurt? Hungry?" which shows that they realize that the baby's crying has a cause. In the same manner, if toddlers see the cause, they can also infer what its likely effect will be. Again, they can make these deductions only about everyday familiar situations and events. Towards the end of the sensorimotor period, the beginnings of make-believe can be seen in the child's play. You know that in make-believe, children pretend that an object is something other than what it actually is. In make-believe play, children also pretend to be another person. In other words, being able to make believe means that the toddler is able to think symbolically. Make believe and symbolic thinking involve mental representation. You would remember from your reading of Block-2 that symbolism involves using one object or person to represent another. You may have seen toddlers reproduce acts that they have seen adults perform, like pretending to read a book, picking up the telephone receiver, and carrying out an imaginary conversation. A 3-year-old may treat blocks that differ in size as if the longer one was a parent, and the shorter one the child, and play with them. These pretend games become more elaborate during the preschool years. You would have often seen a group of preschoolers playing together, assigning imaginary roles to themselves and acting out their parts. You may like to write about a make-believe game that you have seen a toddler play either alone or with others. What toy object was she playing with, and what was she pretending it to be? 13.3 Pre-operational period. Once the child begins to picture events mentally and to use symbols, it marks the transition to the second stage of cognitive development, the preoperational period. The preoperational period extends from the second birthday to the 6th or 7th birthday. During this period, the child's motor skills diversify and her language also grows rapidly. She learns more about things around her. We shall talk in detail about the nature of thought in the preoperational period in the next block, where the major period of the preschool years is dealt with. From the purpose of this block, let us summarize what the toddler achieves in the area of cognitive development. By the 3rd birthday, the toddler knows the names of most of the people she interacts with on a regular basis. She may know the names of a few colors and may be able to identify them. She recognizes familiar objects. She can name some parts of the body and may be able to state the functions of some of them. She has begun to understand the concepts of big and small, tall and short, thick and thin, so that she can identify which of the two given sticks is bigger and which of the two stones is smaller. The toddler can make such comparisons with reference to two objects. If you were to give more than 2 sticks and ask her to show you the biggest, she is likely to get confused. The toddler likes to use a pencil or a chalk to make drawings and, if asked, names the figure drawn. Her drawings will of course be different from that of an older child or an adult. So do not be surprised if the drawing does not even remotely look like what she claims it to be. At this stage, the drawings are in the form of circles and lines rather than exact figures. You will read about children's art in greater detail in Block 6. The toddler can follow simple instructions. Her memory develops and she can recall events with greater clarity and detail. This enables her to participate with adults in simple games, which require her to follow instructions. She shows an interest in other children. You can see toddlers playing together, but this cooperative play lasts only for a short period of time. For the most part, toddlers play on their own or sometimes with adults.
Most toddlers are fascinated with sand and water. They seem to be discovering that these materials can be manipulated in different ways and spend considerable time playing with them. It would be interesting for you to watch a toddler play with her toys or in the mud. Listen carefully to what she says. She is likely to say a few words every now and then, which will help you to understand what she is thinking. In Unit 16 of this block, you will read about the play activities that toddlers would enjoy and which would foster development. Check your progress. Exercise 1. 1. Listed below are some developments in children's thinking during the sensorimotor period. Take the ones which are not characteristic of the fifth substage. A. Deliberately varies her actions. B. Imitates an action which she has observed 2 days ago. C. Finds solutions to problem situations through trial and error. D. Is able to mentally work out the solution to tasks without physically doing the task. E. Is able to recall events better. F. Is interested in pretend play. 2. Below are listed some characteristics of children's thinking. Of these, which are evident during the sixth substage? A. Can infer a cause if she experiences an event. B. Can represent events mentally. C. Begins to engage in make-believe playing. D. Can foresee the effect of an event. E. Has developed an understanding of numbers. 3. The following abilities emerge in an orderly sequence in the first 2 years. Put them in the order in which they emerge. Experimentation, trial and error. Use of reflexes. Goal-directed behavior. Mentor-directed behavior. Intention in action. 13.4 Summing UP. In this unit we have read about the fifth and sixth substages of the sensorimotor period of development. The fifth substage is marked by the toddler's ability to vary her actions. She tries out different ways of doing things to get different results, i.e., she experiments. Through modifying her actions, she is able to judge which one is best suited to a particular task. This ability to find solutions through trial and error allows her to handle more complex situations. As she experiments with objects, she finds out more about their properties. The fifth substage lasts from 12 to 18 months. Once the infant is able to represent events mentally, she enters into the sixth substage of the sensorimotor period. This lasts from 18 to 24 months. Being able to picture events to oneself is a great leap forward in cognitive development. One of its implications is that the toddler is now able to work out solutions in her mind, without going through a process of trial and error. The former method is more efficient. Most of our day-to-day behavior depends upon mental representation of events and people. The toddler's understanding of cause and effect also develops as a consequence of mental representation. Pretend play becomes possible as the toddler is able to think symbolically. The end of the second year marks the entry into the pre-operational period, which lasts approximately till 6 to 7 years. The preschooler makes great strides in learning concepts, acquiring information and understanding the reason for many events. We will talk about the nature of thinking during the preschool years in detail in the next block. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with the next chapter.